You've seen the brochures, smiling students, perfect lawns and endless sunshine. But those glossy images leave out a crucial detail: campus safety. The truth? Crime stats rarely make the front page of a college's marketing. Families make life-changing decisions based on incomplete information, assuming safety is a given. For years, schools had little incentive to be transparent about campus crime. The result? Students arrived on campus with a false sense of security, unaware of real risks. The beautiful brochure was a lie of omission. For decades, campus crime was hidden, serious incidents downplayed or unreported to protect reputations. Students and parents couldn't make informed choices. There was no way to compare safety between schools. Without public data, schools weren't held accountable and safety improvements lagged. Everything changed after the 1986 murder of Jean Clery at Lehigh University. Her parents discovered dozens of violent crimes had gone unreported. Their grief became a movement. Students and families deserved to know the truth. They fought for federal legislation to force transparency. Their efforts would transform campus safety forever. The Clary's advocacy led to the Clery Act, a law requiring colleges to disclose campus crime statistics. No more hiding numbers or sweeping incidents under the rug. Now, schools must publish annual crime reports and issue timely warnings about ongoing threats. Students can compare safety records just like tuition or academics. The law also requires a public crime log, offering day-to-day transparency. The Clery Act made campus safety a public right, not a private matter. The idyllic brochure image now had to be backed by facts. Transparency became the new standard. In 1986, Lehigh University looked like the perfect college, prestigious, safe, and welcoming. Jean Clery, a freshman, believed her dorm was secure, but doors were often propped open, a known but ignored risk. The administration was aware but did little to fix it. Crime data showing a pattern of incidents was kept secret. Students like Jean trusted in safety measures that didn't really exist. The gap between perceived safety and reality was wide and dangerous. That gap would soon have devastating consequences. Joseph Henry, a fellow student, had a history of harassment and theft, well known to the university. Each incident was treated as minor, never connected as a pattern. The disciplinary system failed to recognize the escalating threat. Victims felt unprotected. Henry faced no real consequences. The university prioritized reputation over student safety. By ignoring the warning signs, they allowed a predator to remain on campus. This systemic failure set the stage for tragedy. Negligence, not just by one person but by the entire institution, proved fatal. On the night of April 4th and into the early morning of April 5th, 1986, the university's systemic failures came to a head. Joseph Henry, the student with a known history of theft and harassment, decided to go shopping, as he later called it. He planned to burglarize dorm rooms, looking for cash and electronics he could steal and sell. Because of the university's lax security culture, this was shockingly easy to do. He found a main entrance door to Stoughton Hall propped open with a pizza box. This wasn't a sophisticated break-in. He didn't have to pick a lock or disable an alarm. He just walked right in, thanks to a common student habit that the university had failed to address as a serious security risk. Once inside, Henry moved from floor to floor, testing doors. He found that 3 separate dorm room doors had also been propped open, left ajar by students who likely felt safe and secure in their own building. This allowed him to slip in and out of rooms, stealing from sleeping students without being noticed. He stole a purse here, some cash there. This went on for some time, a silent predator moving through a building that was supposed to be a sanctuary. Each open door was another failure of the system, another testament to the false sense of security that permeated the campus. The residents of Stoughton Hall were asleep, completely unaware of the danger that was walking freely through their hallways. Eventually Henry reached Jean Clery's room. Her door was also unlocked. Inside, he found Jean asleep in her bed. What began as a series of burglaries escalated into a crime of unimaginable violence. Henry brutally assaulted and then murdered Jean in her own room. It was a horrific, senseless act that shattered the peace of the campus and the lives of everyone who knew her. The crime was not a random, unpredictable tragedy that came out of nowhere. It was the direct, foreseeable result of a series of institutional failures. It was the result of a university that ignored a predator in its midst and fostered a culture where basic security measures were routinely ignored. The aftermath was immediate and devastating. The discovery of Jean's body the next morning sent shockwaves through Lehigh University and beyond. The idyllic image of the safe, scholarly campus was instantly destroyed. In its place was a grim crime scene and a community grappling with fear, grief, and anger. The propped open doors, once a symbol of a casual, trusting community, now looked like monuments to a fatal naivety. The university had failed in its most basic duty, to keep its students safe. Grieving the loss of their daughter, Howard and Connie Clery sought answers about security at Lehigh University. The university's responses were evasive, leading the Clarys to launch their own investigation. They uncovered that 38 violent crimes had been reported in the 3 years before Jean's death, information deliberately concealed from the public. Feeling betrayed, the Clarys realized their decision to send Jean to Lehigh was based on misleading information. They decided to fight back, founding a non-profit for transparent reporting of campus crime statistics. Determined to prevent future tragedies, they turned their pain into a nationwide campaign for student safety. Jean Clary's parents fought and Congress listened. The result was the Clery Act. Colleges can no longer treat their crime data like a secret. They have to share it. First, they publish a report every year. Second, they warn people when there's an immediate threat. And third, they keep a daily log of reported crimes. For the first time, it was possible to make an apples-to-apples comparison of campus safety. Nothing tarnishes a reputation faster than a headline that says, "Our campus has a stabbing problem." These three pillars create a comprehensive safety net of information. The Clery Act armed students and parents with facts. Let's dive into the first major requirement, the Annual Security Report, or ASR. Every year, by October 1st, every college has to publish this report. The report must include 3 years' worth of crime statistics, so you can see if the campus is getting safer. It's also required to contain statements about the school's security policies. This is crucial because it forces the school to actually have policies. Finally, the report has to define the geography it covers, preventing schools from fudging the numbers. The annual security report looks back at crime trends. But what about a crime that's happening right now? That's where timely warnings come in. If a crime represents a serious threat, the school must issue a warning. A timely warning might be an email, a text, or a siren. It's important to distinguish between timely warnings and emergency notifications. Think active shooter, gas leak, or fire. The school must have a system to immediately notify the campus community. These alerts ensure you're never left in the dark when danger is near. The daily crime log is arguably the most revealing piece of transparency. Every school must maintain a log documenting reported crimes to campus police. It's the unfiltered feed of what's actually going on. The crime log must include the nature of the crime, the date and time it was reported and occurred, the general location, and the disposition of the complaint, if known. It allows a student, a parent, a journalist, or anyone to see patterns. It makes it much harder for a school to make a problem disappear. It creates a baseline of accountability. In essence, the crime log is the heartbeat of campus safety reporting. It is a vital tool that works every single day to keep colleges accountable for the safety of their students. The Clery Act is a federal law with clear rules. Some schools do a fantastic job, treating the law as a commitment to student safety. Others struggle with resources or training, often making unintentional errors. Some actively fight compliance, hiding crime statistics to protect their reputation. The Department of Education can impose massive fines for violations, signaling the seriousness of the law. These cases show what happens when an institution prioritizes its image over student safety. Penn State University is a textbook example of catastrophic Clery Act failure. The Jerry Sandusky scandal was a horrific story. Top officials knew a predator was using their facilities and chose to handle it internally, protecting the football program over the safety of children. This was a massive legal failure. There was a conspiracy of silence. They failed to report and warn. The Department of Education launched an investigation, finding a lack of administrative control and failure to prioritize safety. Penn State was hit with a record-setting fine. You cannot place your reputation above the law. Michigan State University also faced an earth-shattering scandal with the Larry Nassar case. For years, brave women reported Nassar's abuse, but they were ignored. The university had countless opportunities to stop him, and they failed. From a Clery Act perspective, this was a disaster. Reports were buried and the system for training campus security authorities was inadequate. In 2019, the Department of Education fined Michigan State $4.5 million. The message was clear. Willful non-compliance will be met with severe penalties. Not every Clery Act case involves a multi-million-dollar fine. UC Berkeley, praised for its alert system, has faced criticism. Its urban setting presents safety challenges, blurring campus and city lines. Berkeley's Warn Me system uses texts, email, and social media. But the university faced backlash for not issuing alerts in sexual violence cases. Students felt the university prioritized legal definitions over community safety. Clery compliance is about culture and transparency, even when uncomfortable. Laws like your phone's operating system need updates. The Clery Act was a fantastic start but had gaps. In 2013, the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, was reauthorized, including provisions aimed at colleges. These VAWA amendments were folded into the Clery Act. Schools now had to track domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. This forced schools to acknowledge these as unique problems. Colleges now had a responsibility to address interpersonal violence. Schools had to look at new dangers and think about how to stop them. Perhaps the most significant change brought by the VAWA amendments was that it forced schools to get specific about policy. It wasn't enough to just say, "We are against sexual assault." Schools now had to include detailed information in their annual security reports about their procedures for handling these cases. And this included, for the first time, a requirement to include a clear, written definition of consent in their policies. Think about that for a second. The federal government had to step in and tell institutions of higher learning that they needed to explain in writing what yes means. It sounds kind of absurd, but honestly, it was absolutely necessary for creating a fair and understandable process for everyone involved. The law required that campus policies define consent as a clear, knowing, and voluntary agreement to engage in sexual activity. It pushed for schools to adopt an affirmative consent standard. This means that the default answer is no. Silence does not mean yes. Being in a relationship does not mean yes. Being drunk does not mean yes. Consent must be an enthusiastic, ongoing yes. This was a radical shift away from the old model where the focus was often on what a victim did to ask for it. Instead, the new focus was on what the accused did to confirm that they had permission. It put the responsibility for getting consent squarely where it belongs. This policy requirement had a ripple effect throughout campus disciplinary proceedings. The VAWA amendments demanded that schools provide a prompt, fair, and impartial investigation and resolution process. It also established certain rights for both the accuser and the accused. For instance, both parties have the right to have an advisor present during any meetings or hearings. Both parties must be simultaneously informed, in writing, of the outcome of the disciplinary proceeding and any appeal. This was an attempt to level the playing field and ensure that the process, which can be incredibly traumatic, was at least structured and transparent for everyone involved. Furthermore, the law mandated that schools list all possible sanctions they might impose on a student found responsible for sexual assault, from a warning to full expulsion. This transparency is key. It ensures that the consequences are not arbitrary and that everyone understands the potential severity of a violation. By forcing schools to put their entire process down on paper, from defining consent to listing punishments, the VAWA amendments made it much harder for institutions to sweep these cases under the rug or handle them with a quiet slap on the wrist. It was a demand for accountability, written into the very fabric of the school's official policies. Counting crimes after they happen is useful. Having a fair process for dealing with them is essential. But what if you could stop some of them from happening in the first place? This is another area where the VAWA amendments dramatically beefed up the Clery Act. The new rules required schools to move beyond just being reactive and to become proactive. It mandated that institutions provide comprehensive prevention and awareness programs for all incoming students and new employees. It was no longer enough to just tell people that crime exists. Schools now had to actively teach them how to prevent it and what to do if it happens. This wasn't just a suggestion to hang up a few posters in the student union. The law specified what these programs had to cover. They must include education on the definition of consent, sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. They must include information on bystander intervention, which is a fancy term for teaching people how to safely step in if they see a dangerous situation unfolding. The goal is to turn an entire campus of passive observers into a community of active allies who know how to de-escalate a situation or get help. It's about creating a culture where everyone feels a shared responsibility for safety. The programs also have to be very clear about the resources available to victims. Schools are required to spell out in detail who a victim can talk to, both on and off campus. This includes information about their right to notify law enforcement, how to obtain a protective order, and what medical and counseling services are available. The law also requires schools to explain how they will accommodate victims to ensure their safety, which could mean changing their housing, class schedule, or transportation arrangements. This part of the law is about empowering survivors by making sure they know all of their options right from the start. This shift toward prevention and education is one of the most important evolutions of the Clery Act. It acknowledges that campus safety isn't just about locks on doors and security cameras. It's about culture. It's about education. It's about giving students the tools and knowledge they need to build a safer community for themselves. It forces universities to invest time and resources into tackling the root causes of violence, not just cleaning up the mess afterward. It's a move from a purely statistical law to one that is also deeply educational, and that change has the potential to make a real, lasting difference. While the VAWA amendments were a major update, another important change to campus safety reporting had happened a few years earlier. In 2008, Congress passed a law that was essentially a companion piece to the Clery Act. It was called the Higher Education Opportunity Act, and a key part of it was the Campus Fire Safety Right to Know Act. This law was born from another set of tragedies, including a 1990 fire at the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill that killed 5 students and a 2000 fire at a Seton Hall University dorm that killed 3 students and injured dozens more. Much like the Clery Act, this law was a response to parents and advocates demanding more transparency. The Fire Safety Act does for fire what the Clery Act does for crime. It requires any college or university that maintains on-campus student housing to disclose information about fire safety. This includes publishing an annual fire safety report, which is often combined with the annual security report, to create one big, very serious document. This report must include statistics on all fires that occurred in on-campus housing for the past 3 years. It has to detail the date, time, cause, and location of each fire, as well as the number of injuries or deaths that resulted, and the value of any property damage. But just like the updated Clery Act, it's not just about counting the bad things that happened, it's also about prevention and preparedness. The annual fire safety report must describe the fire safety systems in each student housing facility. Does it have sprinklers? Does it have a fire alarm? It must also list the number of fire drills the school held during the year. This is all incredibly practical information. If you're a parent choosing a dorm for your child, wouldn't you want to know if one dorm has a full sprinkler system and the other one doesn't? This law gives you the right to that information. Finally, the law requires schools to have clear policies on fire safety education and training for students and staff. They also need to have plans for future improvements in fire safety, and crucially, they must maintain a public daily fire log, just like the crime log. This log documents every reported fire, providing a real-time record. Together, the Clery Act and the Campus Fire Safety Right to Know Act form a powerful duo of transparency. They both operate on the same simple principle that students and their families have a right to know about the real risks in their campus environment, whether those risks come from a criminal or from a faulty wire in a wall. The Clery Act transformed colleges into data-generating machines, producing thousands of pages of reports annually. We wanted information, but now we are drowning in it. Is anyone actually reading it? This creates a paradox. The data is public, but its usefulness is limited if no one understands it. This has led to reliance on third-party rankings, which can be misleading. Data is only as powerful as our ability to use it. It has to be communicated effectively. The journey to true transparency is far from over. The Clery Act's complexity and massive fines have created a new industry. Consultants and lawyers help universities avoid lawsuits. While this means schools take compliance seriously, it can shift the focus from genuine safety to risk management. This creates a culture of fear, where administrators might over-report incidents leading to warning fatigue. Finding the right balance is difficult, and fear can lead to worse outcomes. The challenge is balancing legal protection with the law's intent, clear safety information. Despite challenges, the Clery Act has profoundly impacted campus culture. Universities were once closed kingdoms, but that world is gone. The Clery Act shattered that model, establishing safety information as a right. This shifted the power dynamic, forcing conversations and bringing safety into the light. It empowered student activists to demand accountability. Is the Clery Act working? It's a messy yes. It has fundamentally changed campus safety, mandating transparency and giving students a voice. The Clery Act has pushed campuses toward a safer future. So here we are at the end of our journey through the wild world of the Clery Act. The Clery Act is, to put it simply, a flawed masterpiece. The core idea is perfect, indisputable even. Students and their families have a right to know if the campus they're paying a fortune to attend has a tiny little problem with arson or armed robbery. It took the closed, secretive kingdoms of higher education and blasted their gates wide open with the cannon of transparency. This is a monumental, non-negotiable improvement, but the execution is often a mess. But it is also powerful and transformative, and almost certainly saved lives. It's a mandate for honesty. So, what does the future hold for the Clery Act and campus safety? Well, the work is never truly done. The struggle for a safer, more transparent campus isn't a battle that can be won once and for all. It's more like a never-ending homework assignment for every single college in America. Every year, they have to turn it in. And every year, it gets graded by their students, their staff, and the Department of Education. And just when they think they've figured it out, a new challenge emerges, or a new tragedy exposes a weakness in the system that needs to be fixed. The law must continue to evolve, because the dangers that students face are always evolving too. One of the biggest future challenges is making the data truly accessible. It's not enough to just dump a massive PDF online and call it transparency. The next frontier is finding better ways to communicate this vital information. This means more user-friendly websites, more infographics, and more proactive efforts to ensure students actually see and understand the risks. Imagine a world where comparing the safety records of two colleges was as easy as comparing two cameras on a tech website. That's the goal. The information shouldn't be a secret password you have to work to uncover. It should be presented clearly, right up front, as a basic feature of the product. Another ongoing battle will be to keep the focus on the spirit of the law, not just the technicalities of compliance. The goal of the Clery Act wasn't to create jobs for consultants or to make university presidents terrified of federal fines. The goal was to empower people with knowledge. This requires a cultural shift at every level of university administration. A genuine commitment to the idea that transparency is a moral good, not just a legal requirement. It means erring on the side of warning students even if it creates a little bad press. It means investing in prevention programs not just because the law says you have to, but because it's the right thing to do. Ultimately, the future of campus safety depends on all of us. It depends on lawmakers continuing to strengthen the Clery Act. It depends on universities taking their obligations seriously. And it depends on students and parents continuing to demand accountability, to read the reports, and to ask the hard questions. The legacy of Jean Clery and the tireless fight of her parents is a law that forces us to have these difficult conversations. It reminds us that a truly great education can only happen in an environment where students are safe and informed. And that is a homework assignment that is always worth doing.